Each summer, a remote bay in southwestern Alaska receives more sockeye salmon than any other place on Earth. The water doesn't look different from the outside, but beneath the surface, a migration of over 40 million fish is arriving on schedule. Bristol Bay produces roughly 40 to 50% of the world's wild sockeye salmon supply in a harvest window that lasts fewer than 8 weeks. The entire system, vessels, processors, cold chain, assembles and disassembles around that single biological clock. Over 1,800 commercial fishing vessels operate in Bristol Bay during peak season. This video will trace the complete system, from the first net deployment to the sealed container leaving port. If this kind of operational depth is what you're here for, subscribe and leave a like. And tell us in the comments, have you ever processed or sold wild Alaskan salmon? The run is already started. The nets are going in. Bristol Bay is located at the northeastern end of the Bering Sea in southwestern Alaska. The bay spans roughly 220 miles across and feeds into 3 major river systems: the Kivachak, Nushagak, and Egegik. Sockeye salmon return to these rivers to spawn each year without fail. The Sockeye run begins in late June and peaks through July. This timing is predictable down to within a few days, shaped by water temperature and day length. Commercial fishing operations plan the entire season around this biological schedule. The Alaska Department of Fish and Game monitors escapement, the number of salmon allowed to reach spawning grounds before commercial harvest begins. So fish counters and sonar stations operate continuously throughout the season. Harvest windows open and close based on daily escapement data. Harvest windows are announced by the Alaska Department of Fish and Game, sometimes with only 12 hours notice. When a window opens, every vessel in the bay mobilizes. The coordinated response across 1,800 boats operating simultaneously is among the most compressed commercial harvest events anywhere in the world. The primary gear type in Bristol Bay is the drift gillnet. These are long nets suspended vertically in the water column, drifting with current and tide. So mesh size is regulated to select for sockeye, allowing smaller or larger species to pass through. Bristol Bay gillnet vessels are limited by regulation to 32 feet in length. This size restriction has remained in place for decades, keeping the fishery accessible to independent operators. On the water, while hundreds of small aluminum-hulled boats work the same ground simultaneously, the nets soak for a set period before retrieval. During this time, the vessel drifts with the current. The captain monitors net position, watches for debris, and tracks competing vessels to avoid entanglement. The window moves fast and every drift counts. When the net is retrieved, a hydraulic reel pulls it over the stern. Sockeye salmon hang gill first in the mesh. Deck crew works quickly to shake or pick fish loose, clearing the net for the next set. Speed determines how many drifts complete in a single opening. Fish are immediately sorted on deck. Dead or bleeding fish are separated from the rest of the catch. Quality assessment begins the moment the net clears the reel. Bruised or damaged fish grade lower and return less value. Every handling decision on deck has a price. Both fish are transferred to the fish hold below deck, where they are packed in ice or chilled seawater systems. Temperature control begins immediately after the catch. Core fish temperature must drop quickly to preserve flesh quality and shelf life at the processing facility. Tendering vessels are a key part of the Bristol Bay logistics network. These larger boats move through the fishing grounds, collecting catch directly from gillnet vessels. A tender can consolidate the catch of dozens of small boats, reducing the need for each vessel to return to port individually. Fish transfer between vessels is done with brailer bags, large mesh scoops lowered into the hold, filled with fish, and lifted by crane onto the tender. Transfer speed determines how quickly the gillnet vessel can return to the grounds. Every hour off the fishing grounds during an open window is revenue lost. Tenders are refrigerated. Fish held in chilled seawater are maintained at just above freezing throughout the collection run. A loaded tender carries hundreds of thousands of pounds of salmon before returning to shore-based processors or canneries. Those shore-based processing facilities in Bristol Bay are concentrated in a handful of communities: Naknek, Dillingham, King Salmon, and Egegik. These plants operate seasonally, staffed by workers who travel from across Alaska and the continental United States specifically for the salmon run. So offloading at the processor begins with weight measurement. Fish are pumped or conveyed from the tender's hold into receiving bins and weighed by species and grade. This weight record becomes the basis for payment to the fishing vessel. Every pound is tracked from this point forward. Once weighed, as fish move into the processing line, the first station is heading and gutting, high-speed iron chink machines, named after the role they replaced in cannery history, process hundreds of fish per minute. A single line handles thousands of fish per hour. After heading and gutting, fish enter the cleaning and washing stage. High-pressure water rinses remove blood, viscera, and surface contamination. Water flows continuously through the processing floor. Volume of water used per processing cycle is measured in tens of thousands of gallons per day. Roe, the egg skeins, are removed during processing and handled separately. So Bristol Bay Sockeye roe commands significant value in global markets, particularly in Japan. A single processing run can yield thousands of pounds of roe destined for export within the same day it is harvested. Roe is salted, graded, and packed into wooden kegs or vacuum-sealed packaging depending on the end market. The grading process evaluates color, firmness, and skein integrity. Grade determines export price. Lower-grade roe moves into domestic markets or processed food supply chains. Salmon that move into the canning line are sized and packed into tin cans on automated filling machines. The can filling machines portion fish sections by weight and compress them into standard can sizes. A single canning line operates at several hundred cans per minute. Filled cans proceed to sealing machines, then to retort sterilization. The retorts are large pressure cookers that heat sealed cans to temperatures sufficient to sterilize the contents. Retort cycles run for a set duration determined by can size and product density. After sterilization, cans are cooled, labeled, and packed into shipping cases. Quality control sampling occurs at multiple points in the canning process. Laboratory staff test pH, vacuum levels, and seal integrity. A failed seal means the entire retort batch is held for re-inspection. More fresh and frozen product lines run parallel to canning operations in modern Bristol Bay facilities. H and G fish, headed and gutted, are blast frozen in plate freezers or spiral freezers. Product reaches -20 degrees Fahrenheit within hours of leaving the water. Frozen fillets and H and G product are glazed with water before packaging to form a protective ice coating. Glazing protects the flesh surface during transport. Glaze percentage is regulated and declared on the label in export markets. Packaged frozen product moves to cold storage warehouses on site. These facilities maintain consistent temperatures at or below -10 degrees Fahrenheit. Inventory is tracked by lot number, processor code, and date of pack. Traceability is required for export certification and food safety compliance. Processing facilities in Bristol Bay operate multiple shifts around the clock during peak season. Day and night crews rotate on 12-hour schedules. The line does not stop between shifts. Supervisors conduct handover inspections to confirm equipment calibration and product flow continuity. The processing workforce in Bristol Bay during peak season can reach 10,000 workers across all facilities. Many are seasonal contract workers housed in company-provided bunkhouses near the plants. Shift schedules, housing, and meals are coordinated as part of the employment package during the run. Byproduct processing runs alongside the main lines. Fish heads, frames, and viscera are conveyed to reduction facilities where they are processed into fish meal and fish oil. These products enter animal feed markets and aquaculture feed supply chains. Nothing from the processing floor is discarded. Fish meal is dried to a set moisture level and bagged in bulk. Fish oil is settled, filtered, and pumped into drums or tanker containers. Quality testing for both products covers protein content, peroxide value, and moisture. These outputs ship through the same cold chain logistics network as the primary product. Federal inspection of Bristol Bay product is conducted by NOAA Fisheries and the USDA. Inspectors are present at major processing facilities throughout the season. They verify species identification, net weight accuracy, sanitary conditions, and regulatory compliance at the processing and packing level. Export documentation begins during processing. Each lot of product is assigned a processor code and batch number that links to catch records, vessel ID, and processing date. This chain of custody documentation is required for entry into Japan, the European Union, and other international markets. The majority of Bristol Bay sockeye is exported. Japan receives the largest share of the roe and premium frozen product. The United States consumes the canned product in significant volume. European markets receive frozen fillets and H&G product through specialized seafood import brokers. A frozen product destined for export is loaded into refrigerated marine containers, reefer containers, at the dock. Container loading is timed to vessel departure schedules. Each reefer unit maintains -4 degrees Fahrenheit throughout transit. From Bristol Bay, our product routes through the port of Kodiak or Anchorage before connecting to major Pacific shipping lanes. Transit time to Japan is typically 10 to 14 days by sea. Air freight is used for premium fresh product during peak season when demand and pricing justify the cost. Our domestic distribution of Bristol Bay canned salmon uses the Continental Freight Network. Product is palletized and shipped by refrigerated truck to regional distribution centers. From there, it enters retail and food service channels. Transit from Alaskan dock to mainland warehouse takes 3 to 7 days. The Bristol Bay Fishery is certified by third-party sustainability bodies, including the Marine Stewardship Council. This certification affects market access, particularly in retail chains and institutional buyers that require traceability documentation. Certification audits occur annually and evaluate management controls alongside catch data. The fleet that operates in Bristol Bay includes vessels from across Alaska and beyond. Permit holders range from multi-generational Alaskan fishing families to corporate fleet operators. As limited entry permits are legally tradable and carry significant monetary value, reflecting the commercial scale of the fishery. Set net operations run parallel to drift gillnet fleets in some Bristol Bay districts. Set netters anchor their nets from shore and fish from skiffs. The operation targets salmon staging before they enter river mouths. Both gear types are strictly regulated by district and timing. Weather in Bristol Bay can shift rapidly. Winds off the Bering Sea push strong chop across the shallow bay. Vessels operating in these conditions manage net fouling, vessel stability, and crew safety simultaneously. Lost weather days reduce total seasonal yield. During periods of high escapement, fishing openers are extended. During low escapement periods, windows close entirely or are restricted to specific districts. Fleets adjust deployment immediately when closures are announced. Managers communicate changes via radio and posted notices at processors and docks. The total annual harvest from Bristol Bay varies year to year, but routinely exceeds 30 to 40 million sockeye salmon. In record years, total run returns have exceeded 60 million fish. The combined commercial harvest value regularly reaches $300 million or more in ex-vessel revenue alone. At the end of the harvest opener, vessels return to dock for offloading, refueling, and gear maintenance. Nets are inspected for damage and repaired between openers. Engines and hydraulic systems are serviced by vessel mechanics. The interval between openers may be as short as 18 to 24 hours. As the salmon run declines in late July and August, processing volumes taper. More workers are released from seasonal contracts in waves as individual lines are taken offline. Facilities shift to deep cleaning protocols before final shutdown. Equipment is inspected, lubricated, and prepared for storage before the next season. The vessels also prepare for off-season layup. Hull inspections, engine rebuilds, and net replacement happen in the months between seasons. Vessel owners in Bristol Bay routinely invest a significant portion of seasonal earnings back into equipment maintenance to ensure readiness for the following year's opener. Research surveys and stock assessments run through winter and spring before the next season opens. Biologists from the Alaska Department of Fish and Game collect escapement data, age structure samples, and spawning ground surveys. This data becomes the management framework for the following season's harvest regulations. The Bristol Bay Sockeye system does not pause. When the last container leaves the dock at season's end, the management infrastructure shifts immediately to data analysis and planning. Within months, the permits are renewed. The vessels are rigged and the run forecast for the following year is published. The containers are sealed. The dock is quiet, the processing floors are cleaned, the sockeye run has completed its cycle, and the harvest system has followed it from the first net set to the last pallet shipped. And Bristol Bay will assemble this entire system again next June. The same bay, the same gear, the same compressed window. Under this video, there's a subscribe button. It's a small action, but it helps document how water becomes food at scale. If you found this system worth following, leave a like. And tell us, where are you watching from? Have you ever worked in aquaculture or seafood processing?